Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We just had a fascinating conversation that really puts the housing crisis into perspective. We chatted about how pre-construction condo sales are down by 71%, how Richard is worried that it's going to impact the single-family market as well, that it is going to make the current housing crisis worse, and that it is going to put a lot of construction workers out of work, layoffs, and so much so that he said that they're going to move to the United States, they're going to move to Alberta, they're going to move to other industries, and so therefore, when we want to start building again, when we can start building again, we're not going to have the people the workers to do that. It's a pretty dire assessment, but I think he's right. The inventory of pre-construction condos right now is at 24 to 28 months. Some people are saying, and it should be about 8 months. And so that's like a year and a half of workout that we've got to go through. The differential in pricing between pre-construction condos and actual condos is 30%. If their deposit was 20% and the pricing has gone down by 30%, you've lost your deposit. You may have lost all your equity. And that's why assignment sales are everywhere. That's why you've got builders wondering whether they can sue the buyers that aren't showing up with the closing amounts. You got banks that are worried about appraisals and whether they can lend money. And at the same time, you've got councillors running for mayor that have got their heads in the sand, thinking that they don't need to change anything and it's all going to get better miraculously somehow. I am shocked at the naivety that I've been seeing. I've been shocked at the lack of market reality that I have been witnessing. I am disappointed by people that would rather argue about bike lanes ad nauseum, which may be an issue that is important to some people and needs to be addressed, but it shouldn't be 15 or 20 minutes of every debate. The line about rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, I think, is completely apt for what's happening in Mississauga today. We are in a housing crisis, and we're headed for a worse housing crisis. Vaughan is getting great transit in the Vaughan Metro Center in Richmond Hill. Markham is getting great transit. Mississauga has been neglected and forgotten. The Milton Mississauga line has been talked about since 1960 when the Western Freight Bypass was first proposed, and certainly for the last 20 years. I could show you the big move maps that had the all-day two-way go as one of the key strategies, and it had the best benefit to cost ratio. But we don't get it. Why don't we get it? We don't get it because it's expensive, yes, because you got to negotiate with CP, yes, but because we're not proposing to build density around those transit nodes. And if we're not proposing to build density around the transit nodes, it doesn't solve the provincial problem. So why should they give us the money to give us the GO train? You know, we're thinking we can get everything without actually having to do anything for it. We have got a housing crisis in Mississauga and in the Greater Toronto Area, and your councillors, particularly those councillors that are running for mayor, don't have any solutions. Alvin Tedjo is talking about fourplexes. People say either the fourplexes, are never going to get built because it's a mom and pop. It takes a whole bunch of money. It takes a small contractor. It's a whole bunch of work, and then so it's not going to happen. Or if you actually thought it was the panacea, people wouldn't like it, and because they don't want 4 times as many cars, 4 times as many people, 4 times as many units on every single street. So if it works, it's a disaster. And the solution that people say, or the comeback they say is, well, it's not going to actually have that much of an impact. Well, then why argue about it forever if it's not going to have that much of an impact? That's the typical woke idea, that you argue about it forever when it actually is irrelevant. I had John Rapley on my show a week ago. He's a very successful economist. He lives in Johannesburg, South Africa, in Cambridge, England, and in Ottawa, Canada. He writes in the Globe and Mail almost every Saturday. He thought that this housing crisis could cause civil unrest. And his argument is that this is the greatest generational inequity in history, where people of my age have effectively taken from the young the opportunity for the Canadian dream, because they are going to be mired in public debt, private debt, in high inflation, outrageously high housing prices that they can't afford a single family home, probably not a 3-bedroom condo, and they're going to be sentenced to living in a 500 square foot 1-bedroom condo. I've got a living room that's 500 square feet. It is wrong. It is inequitable. It is a shame. It is a tragedy. And Richard had a great line. He said, we need to shock the system. I think that's what we got to do in this kind of a environment when you've got so much going wrong. I think a shock to the system is the only solution. And so I would suggest that the immediate elimination of development fees on purpose-built rental and on any condominium less than, call it 500,000, is called for. I think development fees on the balance of housing need to come down dramatically. We should not be taxing newcomers, homeowners, home buyers at 30, 35% with, $100 or more $1,000 a unit in development fees. It is a huge mistake. It is a system that other jurisdictions in the United States, et cetera, don't do. It is wrong and it is regressive. It is the most regressive part of our supposedly progressive tax system, where people that have been in their home for a long period of time don't face that kind of cost to build, things that are needed by society, but newcomers are. It is a millstone around new construction. I think we need to immediately increase density for major transit zones so that people that were going to build 20 or 30 stories that are marginal in their economics and so therefore aren't going ahead, give them another 20 to 40%, maybe 20% if it's really close to, 40% if it's really close to a transit zone, and maybe 20% if it's farther away. I think major roads and arterials, we need to increase the density to 6 to 8 stories, do a study, figure out what's right. Dundas Street, it should not be 2-story, 1-story strip malls the whole way. Allow developers to assemble those properties, have enough profit in it so that they can build something that will be of lasting value and house some of our residents and still have great retail at grade. And then we've got to get on with building transit, because the best places for us to have this density, to have this height, to house the people, other than single family homes, which I think we're out of room for, is around transit nodes. It's around GO train stations. And our GO train stations, if we have all day 2-way frequent GO train service to downtown, are perfect places, and frankly better than some of the places that people would live on the Yonge subway or the University subway line. And importantly, if it's 2-way, our residents at Huron, Ontario, or at Dixie, or at Arundel could go west to Meadowvale, where the jobs are. But now, with only one-way traffic in the morning downtown and one-way traffic outbound in the evening, we can't actually get our residents by transit to the jobs in Pill Hill, in Meadowvale, around there, etc. What we have done in Mississauga, I believe, is a planning mistake. It is a red tape regulation noose around our neck. And I think that the candidates for mayor that are current city councilors have got their heads in the sand. And I think it's going to be same old, same old. Einstein's comment about doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result that's the definition of insanity. Or my line about this is rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. We're still going to hit the iceberg. And you think about John Rapley's comment about civil unrest. It took 2 years for people, and it wasn't everybody, but it was 15% of the population to get really upset about vaccines and vaccine mandates and COVID-19 restrictions. So lots of people put up with it, but 15% of the people didn't, and it caused civil unrest in Canada. Think about what would happen if every young person under the age of 40, 35 came to the realization that older Canadians had stolen from them, because of the system that we've created, their opportunity to own a home, their opportunity to live the Canadian dream. And their only hope is they get a loan from mom and dad, or that mom and dad pass away and leave it to them in the will. I think it's a travesty, and we need to shock the system, as Richard said. And I'm willing, I think I've got the knowledge and I got the leadership skills to get this done, to solve this, to make Mississauga the best place for people to live and work and enjoy a wonderful life. Thank you. On June the 10th, please consider voting for Brian Crombie and check out my podcast at briancrombie.com, my videos, or my political background at briancrombie.ca. Good night, everybody.